What's going on, guys? It's Greg here, aka NYPrepper. In this video, I'm going to talk to you about my top 5 SHTF guns. And this is part 2 of the top 5 SHTF guns with Alaskan Ballistics. So if you haven't seen part 1, go to the Alaskan Ballistics YouTube channel. And I'll leave a link to that video at the top of this video on the upper right portion of your screen. You should be able to see a link to part 1, and check out Alaskan Ballistics. He's a great guy and he's got a lot of good firearms content. He does ballistics testing, penetration testing, chronograph testing, hand loading, hunting. He's got a variety of different firearms content, and he lives in Alaska. I've been following him for many years, and he's just a wealth of information. I highly recommend you subscribe to his channel. You won't be disappointed. So before I get into the top 5 SHTF guns, before I get into my list, I want to just talk about some general things that you should consider when selecting guns for SHTF. Now, I want to just say that this is my personal top 5, and you may disagree with me on the way that I ranked these different guns, or you may think that some of the guns on this list shouldn't even be there, and that's fine. This is my personal list, and there's no right or wrong when it comes to prepping. There's a lot of gray areas, and a lot of the things that you do when it comes to prepping are personal choices, and certain things may work for you that don't work for me, or there's certain things that work for me that may not work for you. There's a lot of things to consider. Now, there is right and wrong in certain situations. For example, you're not going to use a 700 Nitro Express for home defense or squirrel hunting. That's obvious. But whether you select a 308 or 6.5 Creedmoor, or whether you choose a Glock or a revolver, doesn't really matter, practically speaking. It really comes down to personal preference and your terrain, your climate, your recoil tolerance. These are all things that you need to consider when you're selecting firearms for SHTF. So there's really no right or wrong here. It's just what works for you and your area, your terrain, whether you live in the open prairies of the Midwest or you live in the hill country here in the East in Pennsylvania. We have heavily forested hill country. If you live in South Dakota, you may need different types of firearms than over here in Pennsylvania because you have more open expanses of terrain. So these are all things that you need to factor in. Also, your recoil tolerance, your experience level. I've been shooting firearms for over 20 years, so it's not like I just went to the store and bought all these guns last month. These are firearms that I've shot a long time, and I'm very proficient with them and comfortable with them. So you need to consider what works best for you. Everybody has different terrain, climate, recoil tolerance, etc., etc. So when we're selecting a firearm for SHTF, there's a couple of things that we need to consider. First thing is obviously self-defense. Okay, you need your firearm to be able to protect you against two-legged predators and four-legged predators. After society collapses, if it's a true SHTF situation where you have no more 911, no more emergency services, you're going to be your own first responder. You're not going to have 911 to call. So you're going to have to deal with any kind of threat, whether it's from man or beast, on your own. And if you live in an area that has a lot of four-legged predators like Alaskan Ballistics, he lives in Alaska. There's brown bears all over the place there. There's moose. There's all kinds of large fauna that can trample you. So you have to factor that into your top 5 SHTF guns as well. Here in Pennsylvania, we have some of the largest black bears in the country. We have 800 or 900 pound black bears that have been shot by hunters in the last few years. So that's something that I factor into my top 5 SHTF guns. But self-defense is one of the critical things that you need your firearm to do. If you look at Hurricane Katrina, you can recall that there was a lot of violence after Hurricane Katrina. Also, if you're interested in reading about SHTF situations and how savage people can be in SHTF situations, check out SHTFschool.com. I'm not affiliated with them, but there's a guy by the name of Selko Blagojevich, and he survived the breakup of Yugoslavia in the 90s, and he wrote a book about it, and he does a blog on that website, SHTFschool.com. He survived an entire year after Yugoslavia collapsed and disintegrated, and I highly recommend you check him out. I'm not affiliated with him or his website. I'm not getting any kickbacks. I'm just sharing a good source of information. So you definitely want your weapons to serve you in a self-defense capacity against man or beast. And you also want them to be fairly versatile because you just don't know what kind of terrain you're going to be operating in. So even if you live in a forested area where shots may be no longer than 100 yards, you never know where you may end up after an SHTF situation. What if you end up in a farm country area and you have open terrain where, you know, people can be shooting at you from hundreds of yards away? So that's something to factor in. You want your firearms to be versatile. They should be able to handle CQB, medium range, and also long range. Now, another important thing that you need your firearm to do for you is you need your firearms to be able to provide food for your family, which means hunting. And hunting should always be a last resort. If you're in a situation where you have to hunt for food, you're in a bad situation. You want to stock up on emergency food, whether it's canned food, freeze-dried food, whatever your preference is. You should stock up on emergency food before SHTF comes. And if you talk to anybody who's a seasoned hunter, they'll tell you that many times they're not successful. But you want firearms that can be used to take game as a supplement to your existing food supplies. And also, you want your firearms to have some anti-material capabilities. And what I mean by anti-material is you want your firearms to be able to destroy things. And the reason why you might want to have a firearm that can do that is if you have to stop a vehicle, if there's a vehicle full of bad guys and they're trying to ram your house or do something bad, you may want to stop that vehicle. And if all you have is small caliber weapons, it's going to be much harder to stop that vehicle. So you want something that has some anti-material capabilities. But the three most important criteria for your SHTF firearms is they have to be able to defend you against man or beast. They have to be able to provide food for you and your family. And they have to have some anti-material capabilities. And a few more important considerations when it comes to purchasing your SHTF firearms is that you're not going to have any resupply. You're not the U.S. military. You're not going to have unlimited ammunition and magazines dropped to you anytime you want via air. So as a result, you need to factor that into your firearm selection. Brownells and your local gunsmith are not going to be available, so you want something that's reliable. You want reliable firearms, and you want plenty of spare parts, spare screws, spare springs, tools, sights. Midway USA or Cabela's is not going to be available either, so you want to make sure you have enough spare batteries, slings, holsters, etc., magazines. Also, it's smart to have a mixture of manually operated firearms with internal magazines in addition to your semi-automatics with external magazines. And the reason why is that manually operated firearms are extremely reliable and you don't have to worry about gas regulation or feeding issues as you do with a semi-automatic firearm. And if you have a manually operated firearm with an internal magazine, you also don't have to worry about losing magazines or making sure you have enough magazines. As long as you have ammunition, you can operate the weapon and deploy it in whatever mission you need to deploy it into. And again, semi-automatics are much more sensitive to ammo. So if you have to scavenge ammo, it may not necessarily work in your firearm, versus if you have a manually operated firearm with an internal magazine, it's pretty much guaranteed to work as long as it's the same cartridge as what your firearm is chambered for. Also, manually operated firearms are easier to clean, easier to operate. So there's a lot of benefits to a manually operated firearm. Another thing to consider for SHTF guns is normal rules of self-defense go out the window. So in a normal rule of law situation, like right now, you want cartridges that are slightly less powerful and bullets that expand rapidly or even blow apart to prevent overpenetration and to do more damage to soft targets. However, after SHTF, you're not going to need to worry about overpenetration as much. Unless you live in an urban area, you're not going to need to worry about a lot of the same things you have to worry about now. And in fact, overpenetration may actually be a good thing for SHTF, because you may have to deal with some marauders that are wearing body armor or are hiding behind cover, such as walls, cars, brush, etc. So you're going to want cartridges that can penetrate well and have a lot of power. You don't want anemic cartridges with poor penetration in SHTF, because you just never know what situation you're going to be in. So a little bit more penetration and more power can be a huge advantage, especially if your threats are hiding behind cover or are armored up. Another important consideration is quality. You don't want to get cheap stuff. You want to make sure your firearms are good quality. You don't have to have top-notch firearms, but you want firearms that have withstood the test of time. You want good, reputable brand names. You don't need to really go to the extreme level of spending thousands of dollars on a rifle. Unless you have the money, then of course that's great, but you just want something reliable and that's withstood the test of time. Another thing too is night sights for all your defensive weapons. I highly recommend night sights on all defensive weapons. And if you have a hard time finding night sights for your particular firearm, check out Tooltech Gun Sight. They make custom night sights, and I've done several reviews of some of their sights that they made for me. So check them out. They do custom night sights. They machine sights from steel bar stock, and they put tritium vials in them, so they could pretty much make night sights for any firearm. Also, generally speaking, I prefer scopes and iron sights over red dots and reflex sights for SHTF. And the reason why is that scopes and iron sights are not reliant on electronics and batteries. So a red dot and a reflex sight are reliant on electronics, and if there's an EMP, it is possible that those electronics could be destroyed. Also, if you run out of batteries, that could also be an issue for your red dots. So for me personally, I prefer scopes and iron sights over red dots and reflex sights for my primary SHTF weapons. Now, if you already have plenty of firearms that have iron sights and scopes, then go for it and get yourself a red dot or reflex sight. There are a lot of advantages to red dots and reflex sights, but if you're on a limited budget and you don't have a lot of money to spend on multiple different firearms, get yourself something that has iron sights and a scope. Okay, that's my recommendation. So, for example, an ACOG is a great option instead of an aim point, because an ACOG uses fiber optics and tritium versus an aim point uses a battery. Now, if you do have to get a red dot and you really are just dead set on a red dot, then get yourself something like an Aim Point or an EOTech, something that's really high quality and that's dependable. And I wanted to just address the issue of scavenging, which always comes up when you talk about SHTF guns. You always hear people say, oh, get a 9mm or get a 5.56 because that's the most common and you're going to be able to scavenge ammo. So that's definitely good, but the thing is what's common depends on where you live. So if you live in a big city, 9mm is going to be a lot more common than 357 Magnum or 44 Magnum, and 5.56 might be more common than 30.06 or 308. But if you live in a rural area like I do, there's actually more people with 357s and 44 Magnums and 308s and 30.06s and 270s than there are people with 9mm and 5.56. And the reason why is that most people in my area are hunters. So that's something to consider too. And also, you don't want to purchase a firearm just because it's common and that you think you can scavenge ammo for it. You should still stock up on plenty of ammunition and not rely on scavenging. Also, you want to avoid firearms that are too much oddball. So without further delay, let's get started with my top 5 SHTF guns. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoy the video. All right, guys. So number 5 is going to be pump action 12 gauge shotgun. And the reason why you want to have a pump action 12 gauge shotgun is the versatility. A 12 gauge shotgun is extremely versatile. You can use it for small game hunting and even big game hunting. Also, it's very effective in close quarters combat, aka home defense. A 12 gauge shotgun with a shorter length barrel is an excellent choice for home defense or CQB. Shotguns are also relatively cheap. You can get a good quality shotgun for as little as $300. So it's easy to stockpile on shotguns. You can buy 3 or 4 shotguns for the same price as a higher end bolt action rifle or AR. And that's really good if you plan to arm several people in your family or in your group or whoever. It's always good to have several firearms, and shotguns, you can buy several of them and they're not going to break the bank. They're also easy to use and easy to learn. If you have to loan your 12 gauge shotgun to somebody else, it's going to be easy for them to learn how to use it and be able to effectively use it under stress. Because shotguns fire shot and they don't fire a single projectile, they're a little bit more forgiving when it comes to stressful situations because you don't need perfect sight alignment. If you're a little bit off, you're still going to hit your target with some pellets. Also, the 12 gauge shotgun is extremely common, and you can pretty much find 12 gauge shells almost anywhere in North America and even Europe and a lot of foreign countries. The 12 gauge shotgun is extremely popular. You should be able to easily scavenge 12 gauge slugs, 12 gauge buckshot, and birdshot in most rural communities in North America. Now, my recommendations for the 12 gauge shotgun is to go with a Remington 870 or a Mossberg 500 or 590. And the reason why is that the Remington 870 and the Mossberg 500 or 590 are really the only shotguns that have been tested in combat situations. Now, the Remington 870 was not actually formally tested in combat, but it's been used for several decades by law enforcement in the United States. So it's been proven to be effective in stressful situations. And the Mossberg 500 or 590 was actually evaluated by the U.S. Army, and they did a multitude of tests on the Mossberg 500 because they were thinking of making it a standard issue shotgun for certain infantry units and ground forces, and they found that the Mossberg 500 passed all of their tests. So my recommendation is to go with a Remington 870 or a Mossberg 500. Now the Mossberg 500, you can get multiple barrels for it. Same thing with the Remington 870, most shotguns. That's what makes them really nice, is that you can get longer barrels for bird hunting. You can get shorter barrels for security. And you can even get rifled barrels for big game hunting, which is very popular here in the eastern United States. A lot of people get rifled barrels for their shotguns, so this way they can use sabot slugs and they can take deer and black bear with copper solids all the way out to even 150 yards with pretty good accuracy. So my recommendation is to have one tactical shotgun and one hunting shotgun. Now what you're looking at here is my tactical shotgun. This is a Remington 870 that I customized. I've added some scattergun technologies, night sights. I also added a heat shield. I think a heat shield is very important, especially if you're going to use your shotgun in defensive situations. The steel on a shotgun barrel is very thin. So after you take a couple of shots, it's going to be super hot. And if you touch that barrel, you're going to burn yourself. So to me, a heat shield is mandatory for a defensive shotgun. It's not as mandatory for a hunting shotgun because you're not going to be manipulating the shotgun in such a way that the barrel could come in contact with your body. But for a tactical shotgun, you definitely want to get a heat shield. They're only like $50 and you just bolt them onto your barrel because that barrel steel is extremely thin. And after just a couple of shots, your barrel is going to be super hot and you really don't want to accidentally touch that against your body or grab it. And the heat shield just makes it very comfortable to grab. You can grab the shotgun pretty much anywhere without having to worry about burning your hand, which is important in a tactical situation. Now, I also have a Mossberg 500 that I don't have on me right now. I loaned it to my father, but I have a Mossberg 500 that has 3 barrels. I have an 18-inch security barrel, a 28-inch ventilated rib barrel that can accept chokes, and I have a 24-inch rifled barrel on that one, and that would be more of a hunting shotgun that I could also use for security, but with the 28-inch ventilated rib barrel and the 24-inch rifled barrel, I can really use those for hunting more so than tactical. And for tactical purposes, I have this one right here. Okay, so I want to just go over some of the features on my tactical shotgun to show you guys some of the things besides just the heat shield that you're going to want to have on your defensive shotgun. So there's a couple of things I did to this shotgun. I put an oversized safety. Okay, look at how big that safety button is. Makes it very easy to actuate. Okay, versus a standard Remington safeties are really difficult to manipulate. They're very small. I added these scattergun technologies, night sights. Okay, you can see the tritium vials there on the rear ghost ring, so I can use this thing in pitch black without any light. And there you can see the tritium on the front sight. I have a light on the side, and this is a 1,000 lumen flashlight. I really like flashlights on defensive firearms. I don't like pressure switches. I like to just have a push button. Okay, and I've done a lot of reviews on this shotgun before. If you want to check out a more in-depth review of this shotgun, I'll leave a link at the top of the video. But I don't like pressure switches. I like to just have a button because if you have like a cord or something, it can get caught and you could rip it off. I just have a standard slim factory pump here. Okay, I don't like any massive pumps. I like them slim. And this heat shield here just makes it real easy to grab. I can grab this shotgun by the barrel and I don't have to worry about burning my hand. If I tried to do this after shooting a couple of rounds, I would burn my hand. Okay, so this shield is made by Tacstar. It's a metal heat shield. If you're going to get a heat shield, make sure you get a metal one, not a plastic one. And then here I just have a side saddle. And one thing you'll notice in my side saddle is I have a mixture of different shells. I have 3-inch triple-aught buck. And then in between them, I have some 2 3/4-inch 1-ounce slugs. And these are not normal slugs. These are Brennick Special Forces maximum barrier penetration slugs, and I've done some tests on these slugs before. I'll leave a link at the top of the video, but these are special slugs that are designed to penetrate through hard objects, and in an SHTF situation I may have to do that. I may have to shoot through cover, I may have to shoot through walls, I may have to shoot through a vehicle to get to the bad guy. So this is a special slug that's made of a hard cast alloy that doesn't expand, and I have it on my side saddle here. And when I load my shotgun up, I alternate the shells. So my first 2 shells are triple-aught buck, and then after that they're alternating with 1-ounce slug and triple-aught buck. So I also have this 2-point sling. It's just a basic 2-point sling, nothing fancy. And also another thing that's very important on a tactical shotgun is you'll notice I have no choke on this, okay? And the reason why is if I want to alternate between slug and buckshot, I don't have to worry about damaging my barrel, okay? So for tactical purposes, you want to have a cylinder bore on your barrel, okay? You don't want to have, or cylinder choke, you don't want to have a choke on it, because if you want to run slugs or bird shot or buckshot or anything, you can do that, okay? But if you have a barrel that takes chokes, you're not going to be able to run slugs in it, okay? Unless it's a special choke for slugs, which they do have, like rifled chokes. But in that case, still, you're not going to be able to run buckshot or birdshot with that rifled choke on. You're going to have to take the rifled choke off before you can run the buckshot. So with this cylinder bore or cylinder choke barrel, I can run buckshot, birdshot, or slugs. Okay, so this makes this weapon multi-purpose. So I highly recommend you guys get yourself a 12-gauge shotgun, one for tactical use and one for hunting. Extremely versatile weapon for SHTF. All right, guys, so number 4 is going to be a semi-automatic handgun. And what you're looking at here is my Glock 20 Gen 4 in 10mm auto and my Rock Island Armory TAC Ultra 1911, also chambered in 10mm. And actually the Rock Island has a double stack magazine, so I can get 16 rounds into this 1911, and that's 16 rounds of 10mm. Just show you guys, it's clear. Okay, there's no ammunition in this. Glock is clear also. Okay. And why would I go with a 10mm instead of a 9mm or a 40 or a 45? Well, to me, a 10mm is the most versatile semi-automatic cartridge because you can use it for personal defense against two-legged predators, but you can also use it for personal defense against four-legged predators like bears and other large wildlife. The 10mm also has more knockdown power. So in an SHTF situation, if you have to shoot through cover and you have to penetrate through a wall or car door or something along those lines, the 10mm will be able to penetrate through light cover. And here's my Rock Island 1911. It's a double stack, 16 round 10mm 1911. I think either of these are fine, either a 1911 or a Glock. In my opinion, those are the two most reliable semi-automatic handguns you can get. Now, I don't have night sights on these handguns, but I do plan to install them very soon. I just haven't had a chance to. I have lights on both of these. I have an Olight Balder on this 1911 here, and I actually have this red filter, which is really cool. If I want to preserve my night vision, I can flip this little lens over, okay, or this little filter, and that'll preserve my night vision. It has a laser, green laser, that's integrated into the light, and I will be doing an in-depth review of this light soon. But it's an excellent light. It's the Olight Balder, okay, and this is the one that has the batteries in it. I don't like the ones that have the internal battery that you can't remove. So here it is, Rock Island Armory. There's the logo. I'm a big fan of 1911s because they're solid steel. There's no plastic on them. This gun is 100% steel. I could literally drive over this thing with my car, pick it up and shoot it, versus the Glock. If I drove over this Glock with a car, it would probably crack. And, you know, I'm not trying to bash Glocks here. I'm just stating a fact. But here's your standard Glock magazine, 10 millimeter. Okay, 15 rounds. And I got this Hogue over grip that goes over the Glock grip, and I really like it. And I got a Streamlight TLR7 on this one. But I highly recommend a 10 millimeter. If you can tolerate the recoil, I think they're much better than 9 millimeter, especially if we're talking about SHTF. Now with the Glock 20, the one thing that it has going for it that the 1911 doesn't have is that with the Glock 20, I can use 30 round magazines, which I have a lot of them, but I'm not going to show them in this video because if I do, YouTube is going to demonetize the video. But you can use 30 round magazines with this Glock 20, and I'll show you the holster that I have for it. I have this beautiful Kydex holster from Craft Holsters, and if you use the promo code NYPrepper10 on their website, craftholsters.com, you can get 10% off. But this is what I recommend for a semi-automatic, a Glock or 1911, and get yourself a light for them. Something with a laser is good, but whatever kind of light you get, make sure it's a good light. Don't get something cheap for like 30 bucks. I do also have a Surefire X300 Ultra, okay, which is very reliable, and it's 1,000 lumens, very bright, okay. And the holster that I have for my 1911 is I just have one of these Molly holsters here, and it's a thumb brake holster, okay. And what I like about this one is that I can put this on my belt, but it also has molly webbing, so I can attach this to my chest rig, and I can wear it on my chest rig, I can wear it on my battle belt, or I can just put my belt through this tab here, through this malice clip, okay, and it's just a thumb brake holster. And this holster, if you guys are interested, is made by Wildy Custom Designs. I'll leave a link in the description box below the video. So definitely recommend the 1911. I really love 1911s. I think they're great, and if you can get one in a high capacity version like this one here, 16 rounds of 10 millimeter with the reliability of a 1911, solid metal, can't beat that. And some of the ammo for this one that you can use, you got buffalo bore mono metals, and you could use these to take down a bear if you had to, okay? You got to think of the 10 millimeter as basically a 357 Magnum in a semi-automatic. So number 4, semi-automatic handgun. My recommendation is either a 1911 or a Glock, and I prefer a 10 millimeter. And this 1911 from Rock Island Armory also comes with a threaded barrel. So I do plan to put a suppressor on this thing. I am in the process of getting my suppressor for this particular pistol, but just a beautiful handgun. Comes with this Picatinny rail. Awesome. I highly recommend you guys get a threaded barrel for your semi-automatic handgun if you can. Anytime you can use a suppressor, or at least have a threaded barrel so you have the option to use a suppressor, is really good. You don't have to use the suppressor, but if your barrel is threaded, it gives you the option to use a suppressor. I think suppressors are excellent, especially for SHTF. You got to think about protecting your ears and also minimizing your noise signature. All right, guys, so number 3 is going to be a semi-automatic rifle. And I like a rifle that has a barrel of between 16 and 22 inches because I think it's best for multi-purpose use with that kind of a barrel length. And if I had to choose the optimal barrel length for a general purpose SHTF semi-automatic rifle, I would pick between 16 and 20 inches, and I really favor 16 or 18 inches because if I have to get in and out of a vehicle, if I have to move through brush, if I have to move through urban terrain, if I have to clear a building, I don't want to have a 24 or 26 inch barrel on my AR. I want something compact, but also long enough where I'm going to get decent velocity, but still be able to maneuver through urban terrain or do CQB work. I personally prefer a DMR setup. And what you're looking at here is my POF Rogue. This is an AR-308. It's chambered in .308 Winchester. It has a 16.5 inch barrel. And with the .308 Winchester, I can fit 20 to 25 rounds into a single magazine. So I'm still getting good capacity. And I have a 2 to 10 power scope on this rifle. It's a Sig Sauer scope. And I really love a low to medium power scope on my AR versus a red dot because it gives me more flexibility to engage threats at longer distances instead of just a red dot, which is going to limit me to typically 100 yards or maybe 150 yards. Because once you start to shoot at longer distances with a red dot, the dot starts to cover up more of your target. So I prefer a low to medium power scope like an LPVO, or this scope is a 2 to 10 power. I think you want something on the low end of 2 power or less, and on the high end maybe a max of 10 or 12 power. But I think a 2 to 10 power, 2 to 12 power, 1 to 6 power, 1 to 8 power, I think those are perfect magnification ranges for a multi-purpose SHTF battle rifle. And this rifle you can use for multiple things, especially if you get one chambered in .308, because the .308 is harder hitting. It has more penetration than a 5.56. It has more capabilities at longer distances. I can hunt big game with this thing. I can use this as a medium range designated marksman rifle. I can easily take down two-legged predators at 500 yards or even more. And also I can use this for anti-material purposes because the .308 shoots a larger projectile than the 5.56. The downside to the .308 is that it's heavier and it's more expensive, but .308 is still a NATO standard round. It's considered a standard round for NATO. So you can easily scavenge .308, and here in rural Pennsylvania, .308 is so common. Pretty much everybody has them for deer hunting. So it's easy to scavenge ammunition, but you don't have to get a rifle chambered in .308. You can get one chambered in 5.56 or 7.62 by 39 or 6.8 SPC. But I would stay away from 300 Blackout or some of these other types of newer cartridges that are kind of more of a gimmick and don't really have good ballistics. You want something that can give you good ballistics, good energy downrange, good lethality at long distances. You don't want a single-use rifle that's only good for CQB. You want something that you can use for longer shots, closer shots. You want something multi-purpose, okay? Something you can use for hunting, for CQB, for longer range shots, okay? So I recommend an AR-10 in 6.5 Creedmoor or 308, and honestly I prefer 308 in an AR platform just because of the standard NATO round. 308 is a standard NATO round. You can still find a lot of 6.5 Creedmoor if you have to scavenge because it's becoming more popular. But 308 has been around for decades and it's a NATO standard round, so it's much easier to scavenge. And it also uses the .308 caliber projectile, which you can easily scavenge 308 caliber projectiles and hand load them. You can pull bullets out from other cartridges that you scavenge. Let's say you come across some AK rounds. You can pull the bullets out of those AK rounds and you can hand load them into your 308 cases. You can pull bullets out of 30-06 or 300 Win Mag even and load them into your 308 cases and it'll still chamber and fire. So my recommendation for a semi-automatic rifle is something with a 16 to 22 inch barrel. And I think the sweet spot for me is 16 to 18 inches. So I can use it for multi-purposes inside of vehicles, clearing rooms, and then also still getting decent velocity for longer distance shots. I like to have a DMR setup, meaning I like to have a scope so I can reach out and touch something if I have to. And I do prefer a heavier caliber 308 for more penetration, longer range capabilities, more lethality at longer distances. Also, anti-material capabilities. Versus 5.56, you have a 55 grain bullet. 308, you have a 150 grain bullet. So if you have to stop a car, you're shooting at, let's say somebody's trying to, ram your house with a car, you can do a lot more damage with a 20 round magazine of 308 than a 30 round magazine of 5.56 because each projectile is 150 grains or even bigger. So you're going to do a lot of material damage as well. And for big game hunting, the 308 superior, but if 5.56 is your thing, that's not a bad choice. It's certainly proven itself in combat, but I prefer something a little bit heavier like 308 or 6.5 Creedmoor or 6.8 special purpose cartridge. And a couple of things that you want to look for when you're buying your semi-automatic rifle. You want a collapsible stock, okay? So here I have a collapsible stock. I can adjust 5 different length of pulls here. I can push it all the way in. And if I push it all the way in, that's good for CQB, okay, when I need to really squeeze through tight spaces. The collapsible stock is very useful for when you have to loan your rifle to other people and they have different length of pull. Also in the winter time, if you're wearing heavy clothing, you can use the adjustable stock because the heavy clothing is going to add probably at least an inch or two to your length of pull. So you're going to have to adjust your stock so you can get a good cheek weld. Now, adjustable stocks are illegal in many states, so check your legality. If you live in a place like New York, where I used to live, you can't get a collapsible stock. It has to be fixed, okay? Which is a big drawback, in my opinion, for an SHTF rifle. Another thing you want is you want to have a light on your rifle, and like I said before, I prefer just a regular push button. I don't like any kind of switches or anything like that because I'm afraid the cord is going to get caught on something and rip off. I like to just have a basic button here, okay? Also, I like to have the capability of using red light to preserve my night vision. So I have this Phoenix TK25 flashlight here. And with this light, what I can do is I can rotate the flashlight head and I can either have white light or red light, okay? And I like red light a lot because it preserves your night vision and it also reduces your signature, okay? If somebody's observing you and you're moving through an area and you have this bright white light, people can see that from a long distance away, okay? You got this bright white light and you're clearing a room or you're clearing a house. It's just much more easy to see that from a long distance versus red light. It's much more discreet, okay? But I like to have my light mounted in such a way that I can access it with my thumb. I don't like any kind of cords or anything like that, anything that can snag. And here I have a 20 round magazine, and this is a steel magazine. I like to have a 20 round magazine because I can still use this in a prone position if I have to shoot prone. I do have a bipod for this, okay? And also you want to think about your sling. You want to get a good quality sling. This one is a Blue Force Gear sling, and it's a 2-point sling. I prefer a basic 2-point sling. It's easy to use, it's simple, it's reliable. Another thing too you want to consider with your scope is you want to have quick detach capabilities. Okay, you want to have an ability to take your scope off. So here I just have these quick detach mounts here. This is an American Defense Systems mount here, okay, and it's just got these levers here. I also have flip-up sights. I have some Troy Industries flip-up sights. They are tritium in them. There's tritium in them. They have tritium vials, so I can use this at night, and I think that's essential. You have to have tritium sights on all your defensive firearms. In my opinion, I think it's essential because defensive situations, you're going to be using your rifle at night or your firearm at night. There's just no way around it. So those are just some things to consider when you're getting your semi-automatic rifle. So again, I prefer scopes over red dots because a scope I don't need a battery for. There's no electronics. My scope does have an illuminated reticle, so when I put that illuminated reticle on, it basically functions like a red dot, especially when it's on 1 or 2 power. But it's much better than a red dot because I can reach out to 500-600 yards, make precise shots, and there's no electronics that could get affected by an EMP or get damaged or whatever. It's just a basic reticle, glass-etched reticle. So I would literally have to break the glass for this scope to get screwed up. Versus red dots, even the most rugged red dot sight is more prone to failure than a good quality scope. And I always recommend high quality scopes. Like I said, everything should be high quality. Your sling, your magazines, the whole rifle, you want it to be good quality. It doesn't have to be top notch, but it should be good quality. And another thing you're going to want is a threaded muzzle. You want to be able to put a flash hider or even better, a suppressor. And I have a suppressor waiting. It's currently on hold. I'm waiting for the ATF paperwork to come back. But I highly recommend a threaded muzzle so you can put a suppressor on there to reduce your visual signature and reduce the noise signature as well. So people can't triangulate your position if you're in a combat situation. Also, this is why having a 16 or 18-inch barrel is ideal, because if you put a can on this thing, if you have, let's say, a 24-inch barrel, and then you add a 7 or 8-inch can, your AR-15 is now going to be 50 inches long, okay? So you don't want to be in that position. So you have to balance barrel length with practicality. Of course, it would be awesome to have a 24-inch barrel AR-308. It would have amazing ballistics and velocity and everything, but once I add a suppressor to this thing, it's going to be basically 24 inches long, because most suppressors for rifles are about 6 to 8 inches. Typically, they're about 8 inches. So once I add a suppressor to this thing, it's going to add an extra 8 inches onto my barrel. It's going to basically be like a 24-inch barrel. So that's something to think about, and that's why I recommend 16 or 18-inch barrels on your ARs or your semi-automatic rifles. And another thing you may want to consider doing with your semi-automatic rifle is you may want to give it a paint job, which I haven't done yet for this one. I still have to do that. But if you don't want to give your rifle a paint job, I recommend carrying some camouflage tape, and the stuff that I use is called camo form tape. And the camo form tape is just basically kind of like an ace bandage that has different camouflage patterns. It doesn't leave any sticky residue. It's not actually tape. It just clings to itself like an ace bandage does, and this way you can wrap your whole rifle with it. And it's very cheap. You can buy one roll for like $8, and you can get multiple rolls for different times of the year. I have snow camo rolls for the winter, and then I have regular camo rolls for the summer and fall. But I definitely recommend painting your rifle, and when you paint your rifle, stick with earthy tones, olive drab, coyote brown, and I do recommend a camo form tape for the winter time. If you're going to paint your rifle brown or olive green, get some snow camo form tape so you can camouflage your rifle in the winter. You can wrap it in a white color so it doesn't stick out in the snow. All right, guys, so number 2 is going to be Big Bore Magnum Revolver, and this is something like a .357 Magnum or bigger. And the reason why I have this as number 2 on the list, so high up on the list, is because a Big Bore Magnum Revolver is basically like having a rifle in the palm of your hands. Here I have my Smith & Wesson Model 500, chambered in .500 Smith & Wesson Magnum, and my Smith & Wesson Model 629 Performance Center, chambered in .44 Magnum. And the .500 Smith & Wesson Magnum has basically the same amount of energy as a 7mm Rem Mag, or even more energy than a 12-gauge slug. Many people use the .500 Smith & Wesson Magnum to hunt at distances of up to 200 yards with proper optics. .44 Magnum, you can easily take a deer or even a black bear, a smaller black bear, out to 50 or even 100 yards with the proper optics and the proper loads and barrel length. But the reason why I have this so high up on the list is, like I said, it's like having a rifle in the palm of your hands. In SHTF, you're going to be moving around a lot, and there may be situations where it may not be convenient to carry your rifle with you, but you're still going to want to have something with a good amount of power. And a Big Bore revolver is extremely powerful, extremely versatile. For example, with the .44 Magnum, I can use .44 specials and get basically the same ballistics as a .45 ACP, lower recoil and lower penetration. Or I can use buffalo bore bear loads, and I can take down a large black bear or smaller grizzly bear with it. So Big Bore Magnum revolvers are very versatile. They're reliable. Revolvers are the most reliable platform for handguns. They're much more reliable than semi-automatics. You don't have to worry about jams or anything like that. So super reliable, very solidly built. Most of them are solid steel. There's no plastic. They're very reliable, rugged, and there's also no external magazine, which is a huge plus in my opinion, especially if we're talking about a long-term SHTF situation. I'm not talking about the power being out for a few weeks. I'm talking about something more long-term, like, the grid is down for several months. Then you want something that's very reliable and doesn't have external magazines, because when you have external magazines, you can lose those magazines, and then your firearm is basically a single-shot weapon. But with a revolver, you have the cylinder, and as long as you have ammunition, you don't have to worry about capturing your magazines. If you're in the middle of a firefight, all you have to do is just dump your shells on the ground. You don't have to worry about carrying a dump pouch with you to make sure that you recover your magazines. So that's a huge benefit. The fact that they don't have an external magazine the fact that they're solid metal, the fact that the way that they're designed, they're basically jam-proof, and also they're like a rifle in the palm of your hand, okay? A 357 Magnum or 44 Magnum can easily take down a deer at 50 yards or 100 yards with the proper optics. You can put scopes on these types of handguns. You can put a red dot. So I think it's an excellent option, and that's why I put it so high on the list, because of the reliability, the power. Also, they're very easy to clean. You don't have to take them apart to clean them. All you have to do is just snap open the cylinder and slide your cleaning rod through the barrel and through the chambers, and you're good to go. Now, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people that are watching this now and think that, you know, I'm crazy or that I'm living in a fantasy world. But remember, guys, the 357 Magnum revolver was used for several decades before police used Glocks, okay? The 357 Magnum was standard issue for police officers for probably 50 years or more, okay? So it's withstood the test of time. It's been used extensively by law enforcement way before Glocks and 9mm were popular. So extremely reliable, extremely powerful, and you can reload a revolver pretty quickly. So I just want to show you, this is my 44 Magnum Smith & Wesson model 629. I've done a review on this one. Performance Center 2 5/8 inch barrel. I have night sights on this pistol here, custom night sights from Tool Tech Gun Sight. I've done a review on these night sights before, but you can get speed loaders. And with the speed loaders, reloading is extremely fast. You don't have to put, you know, individual rounds into the chambers. All you do is you snap open your cylinder here and you just drop it in, you twist, and now we have a loaded cylinder here. Okay, so it's very simple. I practice with my speed loaders and I can reload my revolver in a matter of seconds with a speed loader. Okay, it's definitely pretty fast with the speed loader. Obviously not as fast as a magazine, but not every situation you're going to need to be super fast, and you're not going to necessarily need a whole lot of rounds with these types of handguns, because it's basically going to be a one-shot kill. Okay, you're not going to need 5 or 6 rounds of 44 Magnum to put down a bad guy. Okay, you're not even going to need 5 or 6 rounds of 44 Magnum to put down a small bear. So, you know, this handgun right here, yeah, it only has a 6-round capacity, but I can take one bad guy down with each round. I don't need to use a whole cylinder to stop the bad guy. Okay, even if they're wearing body armor, these types of handguns will do a lot of damage to the person who's wearing that body armor. You know, from the kinetic energy, the energy transfer through the body armor, you're going to break ribs, you're going to rupture organs. Okay, here's my 500 Magnum, and this is a 5-shot, but this is an absolutely beautiful handgun. I've used it extensively on my channel, and you can put scopes on these handguns here. All you do is you just take off the rear sight here. There's screws here. Okay, you take these screws off and you can put a scope on here or red dot, and then you extend the range of these handguns up to maybe 200 yards, especially with the 500 Magnum. If you have a good red dot or a good scope, you can easily take down a bear at even 200 yards with the 500 Magnum. And I'll just show you what one of these 500 Magnum cartridges looks like. This is a 440 grain Buffalo Bore hard cast barrel load. I've done a lot of penetration tests with this cartridge here. And here we have a 44 Magnum 245 grain full metal jacket. You can see there's a pretty big difference between the 44 Magnum and the 500 Magnum. Look at the size difference, but still a 44 Magnum is still extremely powerful. And what also makes these great is, again, anti-material penetration. SHTF, you may have to shoot through walls. You may have to shoot at vehicles to stop a car if there's some bad guys that are trying to ram your house with a vehicle. 500 Magnum or 44 Magnum can easily stop a vehicle because of the massive projectiles. So, and again, fairly quick reloading with the speed loaders. I got this nice little speed loader pouch here. Okay. I prefer a chest holster for my big bore Magnum handguns just because they're pretty heavy and they have a long barrel and the frame is very large. So I prefer a chest holster for this 44 Magnum here. I do have outside the waistband holster, and it is pretty comfortable. And this handgun is basically the same size as my Glock 20 and 10 millimeter, but it has 25 to 50% more power than the Glock 20 10 millimeter. So very small package with a lot of power. This 500 Magnum is only just under 4 pounds, and it has the same amount of power as a 7 millimeter Rem Mag in terms of muzzle energy. This thing can push 3,000 foot-pounds of muzzle energy, okay, in a 4 pound or even actually 3.5 pound package, all right, that you can easily carry on your waist or on your chest all day long. You don't even know it's there until you need it, versus a rifle. You have to lug that whole rifle around. It may not always be convenient. And again, if you're dealing with any kind of cover, you have to shoot through cover, or somebody's wearing armor, having this big heavy-duty revolver is going to really come in handy. And I do have night sights on this one as well. These are custom night sights that I had made by Tooltech Gun Sight also. It's a custom ghost ring tritium rear, and then I have a front tritium as well. Staying with the principle of having night sights on all of your defensive handguns, but I do recommend speed loaders for your revolvers. The companies that I like for the speed loaders are HKS, or you can use 5-Star Firearms. This is a 5-Star Firearms aluminum speed loader. Okay, the 5-Star Firearms is about double the price of the HKS. The HKS is like a hard plastic, and 5-Star Firearms is all aluminum, and they do anodize it. I don't have the anodized version because I didn't feel like waiting an extra 3 weeks for them to anodize it, but they do have different colors and stuff, and I have several of these. You know, you really want to stock up on your speed loaders. Think of them as a magazine. I have probably a dozen for each, you know, so highly recommend a big bore Magnum revolver. That's number 2 on the list. All right, guys. So the moment you've all been waiting for. Number 1 is going to be bolt action hunting rifle or long range rifle. And what you're looking at here is my Ruger M77 Hawkeye Alaskan chambered in 300 Winchester Magnum. And the reason why you want to have a bolt action hunting rifle or long range rifle is because it's simple, it's reliable, easy to clean, easy to use, very accurate, and lots of power. And with a bolt action hunting rifle, obviously you can hunt and provide for your family, you can find food, but also you can engage threats at longer distances. And if you're a one-man army, meaning if you're just a guy with his family and you come up against a group of marauders and you're on your own, having a rifle like this can be a huge force multiplier. And you can read countless stories of snipers in war. Nobody wants to deal with a sniper, okay? You can read so many stories of snipers in various conflicts around the world, and over the years, nobody in combat wants to deal with a sniper because you don't know where they're shooting from, and nobody wants to get hit in the back from an unknown area. So you can basically use your bolt action hunting rifle as a sniper rifle, and that'll be a force multiplier. Let's say you have a group of bad guys and they're 500 yards or 1,000 yards away, and they're coming towards your house or they're raiding one of your neighbor's houses. You can shoot at them from a long, long distance, and even if you don't make any actual hits, just the bullets splattering next to their feet is going to make them think twice. And because they're not going to be able to triangulate your position, especially if you know how to use concealment to your advantage and you're good at hiding yourself and the art of concealing, and you have good camouflage and you have your weapon camouflage, they're not going to be able to find you, and it's going to be very nerve-wracking for them to have bullets flying by them, not knowing where you're located and not being able to triangulate you. So it's a force multiplier. It's got a lot of power, very accurate, very easy to use. It's manually operated. It doesn't have an external magazine, which is another benefit for a long-term SHTF situation. Like I said before, external magazines, you have to make sure that you have a dump pouch so you don't lose them. You have to make sure you have an adequate stockpile of external magazines, because if you lose your magazines, you're not going to have a way of using your firearm. So a bolt action hunting rifle, it has an internal box magazine, and those are the ones I prefer. I prefer one that has an internal magazine, not a detachable external magazine. And ideally, if you can get one that has a threaded barrel so you can put a suppressor on, that's really, really good. Also, if you can get one with open sights, like this Ruger Alaskan here, it has open sights that come from the factory. You can also get sights put onto your rifle. You can purchase aftermarket sights like New England Custom Guns or Brockman's, and you can go to your gunsmith and they can put those sights on your rifle. That's not required, but it's definitely good to have a good quality scope with a maximum magnification of at least 12 power, maybe even up to 20 power. In that range, I think is good. This particular rifle here, I have a 2.5 to 15 power scope on it, and it has an illuminated reticle. I also have a bipod on there. And the cartridge that you're going to want for this rifle, in my opinion, is a 30 caliber Magnum. And the reason why is that the 30 caliber cartridge is the most common cartridge in North America. Whether it's a 30-06, 308, 300 Winchester Magnum, 300 Blackout, 7.62x39, 30-30, 300 PRC, 300 WSM, 300 Weatherby, 300 H&H. The bottom line is that the 30 caliber projectile is the most common in North America when we're talking about bolt action hunting rifles. So what this means is that, number one, it's going to be easy to scavenge ammunition that's already loaded. Number two, if you know how to hand load, you can pull bullets from other cartridges that you find, and you can use those bullets in your rifle. Let me give you an example. This is a 300 Win Mag. Let's say I come across some 7.62x51 NATO M80 ball rounds, and I scavenge them. And the M80 ball rounds are 150 grains. I can pull the bullets out of those M80 ball rounds, and I can use those bullets. If I have powder and primers and cases, I can use those bullets for hand loading. So in my opinion, a 30 caliber cartridge would be preferred. I personally recommend a 30-06. I think that's an excellent choice. 300 Win Mag, also really good. 300 WSM, 300 PRC, 300 Weatherby is fine. It's a little bit more oddballish, but it's fine. 300 Remington Ultra Mag is fine also. Also, other good options are your 270 Winchester, 308, 6.5s, the 6.5 Creedmoor, 6.5 PRC. Those types of cartridges are fine as well. 6.8 Western. The bottom line is you want something that's flat shooting and bottlenecked. My choice is a 30 caliber or 30 caliber Magnum. I have a 300 Win Mag here, but any of those will work. 6.5s, 6.8s, 270s, 308, 3006, 300 Win Mag, etc., etc., 7 millimeters. You want something flat shooting with a lot of power, and this is going to do it for you. And again, this is very reliable. There's no external magazine. It's not very picky with ammunition because it's manually operated, and for a long-term disaster situation, I always prefer a manually operated firearm over a gas-operated firearm because there's much less that can go wrong. Okay, you're using your own human elbow grease to cycle the action. There's no gas system, there's no blowback, there's nothing. It's just manually operated. It's much more reliable, and for a long-term situation, I would actually prefer to have this than an AR-15 because I know it's reliable, it's powerful, it can reach out and touch something. Also, if you go with a 30 caliber Magnum or something similar like a 270, 6.5, etc., you have more penetration than an AR-15. And another good thing about the bolt action hunting rifle is you can penetrate things with it very well. It penetrates armor, penetrates cover, walls, car doors, any kind of barrier you can imagine. It's going to penetrate very well. Body armor, okay, if you have some marauders that are wearing body armor, so that's a huge advantage. But this is number one on my top 5 list, bolt action hunting rifle. Now, I also prefer a hunting rifle that has a controlled round feed. And the reason why is the reliability when you're cycling the bolt. And I've done a video demonstrating how reliable a controlled round feed bolt action rifle is. I can literally cycle this rifle upside down and it will still strip a cartridge from the internal magazine and feed it into the chamber, even if this rifle is held upside down and cycled upside down. And I've done a video demonstrating that. So preferably something that is controlled round feed. All right, guys, so I want to just give you a closer look at this rifle. Got this muzzle brake on here right now, but I plan to put a suppressor on it. I got an Atlas bipod, and I have extendable legs, so I can extend this thing all the way down to 1 foot, which is really good. I really like the Atlas bipods. I have this wrapped in that camo form tape, and I also have a snow camo tape that I can wrap my rifle with to camouflage it. And this is a Mauser style rifle. Okay, it's a Mauser style extractor. So I'll pull the bolt out so you guys can see. So this is what a Mauser style bolt looks like. You got this big claw here. Okay, you can see this claw which grips the rim of the cartridge and controls it during the feeding process. So you can literally cycle this thing upside down. And that's what I recommend for an SHTF bolt action. And the Ruger M77s are all Mauser style bolts, and they're a one-piece bolt. I really love Ruger bolt action rifles because of their ruggedness and reliability, solid steel design. The entire receiver is solid steel. The trigger guard and floor plate are steel. Very tough, reliable rifles. So also I have this cheek riser here, this cheek rest, so I can get proper cheek weld with my scope. And this is an Athlon 2.5 to 15 power scope. I have a cosine angle indicator. I have a bubble level, okay? Now, some other firearms that didn't make it to the top 5 for my list is a .22 rifle or pistol. I highly recommend a 22 LR rifle or pistol, and I actually don't have one right now, but I do recommend a 22. And also, one that I don't really see many people talking about is an AntiMaterial rifle. And you hear me talking about that a lot. And an AntiMaterial rifle could be useful in a situation where you have to stop vehicles. If you have vehicles full of marauders and they're trying to ram through your house or whatever they're trying to do, and you need to stop the vehicle, you may want to have some kind of large caliber Magnum rifle to do some anti-material work. And what you're looking at here is my 416 Ruger, and this is a Ruger M77 Hawkeye guide gun, and I have this Hogue stock on here, and this is an Athlon 1-to-6 power LPVO scope. And the 416 Ruger is basically Ruger and Hornady's version of a 416 Rigby and 416 Remington Magnum. It can throw a 400 grain bullet at 2,400 feet per second. And this particular cartridge here is a Hornady DGS factory load, and it has a 400 grain steel jacketed bullet, and the penetration on this thing is just insane. I've penetrated through 26 Douglas fir 2x10s and 75 sheets of plywood. I've also shot this thing through a 2-foot diameter fresh white oak. So a rifle like this can really come in handy for anti-material purposes. And I got this beautiful cartridge cuff from Mason Leather. If you're looking for a way to carry spare ammo on your hunting rifles, check out Mason Leather. And you can use the promo code NY10 to get 10% off. Look at that beautiful cartridge cuff. So this is something you may want to include in your SHTF arsenal. Also a 22 LR pistol or rifle. So there you guys have it, my top 5 SHTF guns. Check out Alaskan Ballistics. He's got a great channel and he's a great guy. I've been following him for many years. He's very knowledgeable about firearms, ammunition, hand loading, ballistics, hunting. He lives in Alaska too. And he does a lot of penetration tests and ballistics tests, chronograph tests. So check him out, Alaskan Ballistics. And if you guys have any questions for me or Alaskan Ballistics, feel free to email me, NYPrepper85@gmail.com. If you have any questions about these firearms or any questions about selecting a firearm for your SHTF arsenal, send me an email. And leave your top 5 in the comments down below. And as always, take care, God bless, and don't forget the 3 Ps. Prepare, practice, and persevere.